Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Shout out to everybody in the chat as always. How we doing? How we feeling? Hope all is good. Hope everything is well. So we're going to talk about the Tyson Fury social media post where he is blatantly teasing a comeback. Whether or not a comeback is imminent is another story. As always with Tyson Fury, a lot of the stuff he does on social media is for attention, like so many people, of course, from all walks of life. But he is one of the more prolific attention seekers in boxing. And of course, we've got the Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight that just happened that caused a lot of excitement in the UK. There's the Canelo Alvarez card coming up this weekend with some big names on there. There's Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois too. They just got announced, and Tyson Fury is probably feeling lonely. He's feeling like, hey guys, don't forget about me. Remember, I still exist. And so he put this post up on social media. I'm sure many of you have seen it this week, where he said, we're back. And it's him and his trainer Sugar Hill in the gym. I'm not aware of Sugar Hill, and you guys will correct me because I'm saying I'm not aware. I'm not saying that Sugar Hill isn't training any British fighters right now. I'm saying I'm not aware of him training any British fighters right now. There's a difference. So if he is training any other British fighters aside from Tyson Fury right now, you tell me who they are, okay? Inform me. Enlighten me. But if he isn't training anybody else, why would Sugar Hill be in the gym with Tyson Fury? Sugar Hill basically pointed at the camera and said, you know what it is, you know what's coming. And Tyson Fury said something similar, you know what's coming. What's coming is, well, what he wants us to believe is that a comeback is imminent. That Luke Partridge, aka Tyson Fury, I'll antagonize some people and say Luke Partridge, or I'll use his alias, Tyson Fury if you prefer, is trying to lead people to believe he's making a comeback. As I say, whether or not that's true remains to be seen. And if he is coming back, it would surely have to be an Anthony Joshua fight, right? Or would it? Tyson Fury is somebody who likes to do things differently. He doesn't easily give people the fights that they want. He's somebody who drives an extremely hard bargain. He is a insufferable strategist. That's probably not the right way to describe it, but he's a prolific strategist. He's always looking for an angle rather than just going and giving people the fight that they want. He's thinking, how can I get an advantage in this situation? How can I wait until this person is completely finished, washed up, or kick the can down the road as far as possible, and then come out of the blue, catch them by surprise, and then say, ha, fight me now. This is Tyson Fury's approach, and I've described it in the past as the Mayweather method, because this is what Mayweather used to do. Right? Mayweather used to do his little fake retirements, and then he'd come out of his fake retirement and say, ha, I want to fight this guy. And Mayweather would also do this thing that a lot of PBC fighters have done over the years as well, by the way. Deontay Wilder used to do this a lot. He would pick an opponent that he knew he was going to fight several months in advance, but he would continue, quote unquote, negotiations with other fighters so that the opponent who he's going to fight maybe thinks that they're not going to get the fight and they stop training. And then literally with about 5 weeks to go, or sometimes less, but usually like 5 weeks to go, he says, yeah, I'm fighting you. And the person all of a sudden is surprised. Maybe they weren't in full training, when Mayweather's been training for like 2-3 months. So these are the kind of shenanigans that Mayweather used to keep up with. And Tyson Fury has patterned a lot of his strategy on Floyd Mayweather. I'm talking about the way he manages his career. There might be certain things in the ring that he's tried to take from Mayweather as well, but it's mainly the stuff outside of the ring, the way he sets up his fights, the way he waits to fight certain people, avoids certain people, etc., etc. So that's the Tyson Fury game. It's the Mayweather method. So I'd like to shout out Mr. Luca for the super chat. Bright and early. He says, why is Usyk talking about fighting AJ or Fury again? He's moving like Partridge. We should expect better. Fight Parker, then call it a day. I haven't actually heard those comments from Usyk. I didn't watch the press conference. I'm assuming he said that at the press conference with Dubois. Yeah, I think he should call it a day. Because he has had virtually a perfect boxing career up to this point. He's ducked nobody. He's taken on all the toughest challenges, etc., etc. And it was only a few months ago where he said that he's going to fight Dubois again, or he said he's going to have 2 more fights and then retire. But, you know, boxing is like a drug. It's addictive. And these guys who have tasted not only the fantastic financial rewards that can come from boxing, but also the glory, the accolades, it can be very difficult for them to walk away. Even if they've got a great life outside of boxing, they're not sure what to do with themselves. They can become addicted to the buzz, the high, the adulation, the money, the status of being the top boxer, the heavyweight champion, no less, right? But maybe Alexander Usyk at this age, 38, is becoming more aware of his mortality. And so he's thinking, another AJ fight maybe, another Fury fight. I mean, it might be being facetious, to be fair. I don't know whether he made those comments in jest or not, because he does make some comments in jest. He's kind of a cheeky person. So I'd have to see the video for myself. But yeah, shout out to Mr. Luca. I think he should fight. In fact, I think he should retire now. I was saying after the Fury rematch, he should just retire. Forget about Dubois again. Forget about Parker. Forget about all these guys. Just retire now. He's clocked the game. He's got nothing else to prove. He's done it all. Sail off into the sunset. If he was 32 or even 34 and he just achieved all he's achieved, then I'd be saying, yeah, you need to fight everybody. Well, you don't need to, but, you know, I'd like to see him fight everybody else. I'd like to see him fight Parker, rematch Dubois, fight Hrgovic, you know, fight some of the new guys like Bakadir, Jalalov, Moses Atalma in a while, etc., etc. If he was 32, 33, 34, that's what I'd be saying. But at 38, I can't expect too much from, or I can't expect a man that age to go on for too much longer. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, shout out to Mr. Luca. Hopefully, Usyk was being sarcastic when he made that comment, because, yeah, we don't want to see another AJ fight. We don't want to see another Fury fight. That's long. We want to see new challenges like Street Fighter. Shout out to Fight Sport Talk. He says, I'm getting ready to do live soon. What OBS version would you recommend for MacBook? Yeah, I just use, what is this? OBS. Hang on. I'm trying to get the exact version here. 1 second. Is this OBS or OBS Studio? Hang on. Yeah, this is just OBS. That's what the app says on MacBook. And what version is this? This is version 31.0.2. Yeah, OBS. That's what I use on MacBook. I'm streaming from a MacBook right now. Shout out to Striker. Shout out to Muroz, man. Set. Okay, Set says Fury is done. I think AJ sparks him out. Shout out to Anthony YouTube. You know, I was watching an Ingram Jones video the other day. BWTM Sports Gaming. And he's been around a long time on YouTube. from way back in the days. We used to chat when I was on my first channel. And his channel at the time was called Bayloric TV. Used to do a lot of interviews back then. So he's been around a long time. He's interviewed so many different people. And he was saying that he thinks, and he's always felt, that AJ would knock Tyson Fury out. Despite AJ getting plastered by Daniel Dubois, despite the, I want to say, general consensus being that Tyson Fury would win, he says he just has this feeling that AJ is going to knock him out if they fight. It's an interesting take. Personally, I would lean towards Tyson Fury, but it is heavyweight boxing. It wasn't so long ago that we saw Tyson Fury struggle with Francis Ngannou and get dropped with a left hook. I've always felt that Fury is susceptible to left hooks. And Anthony Joshua has got a very good left hook, but he's kind of abandoned it over the past few years. Really, since the Ruiz fight, he's been scared to throw it. But AJ's got a really, really good left hook. And he can throw it as a lead. He can throw it as like a check hook, where he counters you, catches you coming in with it. I saw him throw that shot when he was an amateur, long before he was ever in the Olympics. It's a very instinctive shot, or it used to be a very instinctive shot for him. But the trauma and the demons that the Andy Ruiz first fight created have had him, as I say, abandon that shot, or he barely uses it now. Now AJ's a right hand merchant. He will jab, 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 and throw a right hand. Very rarely will he lead off with a left hook. Now, from a technical perspective, you'll hear many trainers saying you should never lead with a left hook. But there's no hard and fast rules in boxing, or there are not many hard and fast rules in boxing. And if you're good enough, if you're athletic enough, and if you're intelligent enough in terms of ring IQ, then you can bend or break certain rules to your benefit. And one of those rules is leading with the left hook. It's not something I would recommend most people do, but certain fighters would lead with a left hook to tremendous effect. Joe Frazier, obviously, used to lead with his left hook. Mike Tyson used to lead with his left hook. Roy Jones Jr. would often lead with his left hook, etc., etc. Vladimir Klitschko even. You go watch Vladimir Klitschko when he fought Kubrat Pulev. He was leading with his left hook and having loads of success with it. So, as a general rule, I would agree it's not something you should be doing, but certain fighters who are advanced enough are going to do exactly that, and they're going to be very successful, okay? AJ had one bad experience swapping left hooks with Andy Ruiz. And since that time, he doesn't want to use the punch anymore, or very sparingly. But the thing is, in the first couple rounds against Andy Ruiz, AJ was landing beautiful left hooks. You go watch that back. In the second round, he was cracking Andy Ruiz with his lead left hooks, sending spray flying all over the place. The time when he got caught by Ruiz and got dropped in the third round, he wasn't leading with a left hook. He was opening up with both hands. Reckless abandon. He wasn't thinking about defense at that point. He was just letting it all hang out, all the shots go toe to toe. And Andy Ruiz, having the faster hands and the more compact punches, caught him. And obviously Andy Ruiz, having a better chin, caught him. And down he went. And AJ never really recovered for the rest of the fight. And there were moments when he was on wobbly legs later on in the fight, and he tried to lead with a left hook from far too close, and Andy Ruiz opened up and dropped him again. I think that was in the 7th. But you need to know who you can use that shot against and when you should use it. I think against Tyson Fury, it will be a very, very good weapon. So if AJ has the courage and the wisdom to dust that punch off, should the Tyson Fury fight get signed, I reckon that might be the key to any success he may have in the fight. Mr. Luca also says, nah, man, he's already beat them twice convincingly, adding to his legacy. I guess he's responding to somebody else. Okay, Fight Sport Talk, I think he's responding to. Shout out to both those guys. Shout out to everybody else in the chat who's joined. We got Luke Reed, we got Snooker Fan TV. Tom Aitken says, Hatman, weird question, but as a young man, how should one deal with going bald? It is a weird question. Well, I'm really not the best person to answer that because I've always shaved my head. Not because I was going bald, just because I liked having a bald head. I didn't like going barbers and doing all that type of stuff. So I always shaved my head. So it's not something that I'm the guy to be coming to for it. But what I will say is, back in the 1980s, or even the 1970s, right? There were far fewer young people with bald heads that would shave their head. Obviously, you had like skinheads in the 80s and whatnot, 70s and 80s. But there were far fewer people that used to shave their heads back then than compared to today. So if you're going bald, just shave all your hair off and just be a bald guy. There's no real stigma, is there? I don't know, maybe there is in certain communities. I don't want to be presumptuous here, but I want to say, because I've known a few Asian people over the years and worked with them and whatnot. Especially the freshies, right? Freshie Asians. They take a lot of pride in their hair. And I'm talking about the men. They take a lot of pride in their hair, like in Bollywood movies and all that. They got like a full head of Elvis Presley style hair. So maybe to them, like being bald is not the one. But in the UK, loads of young people shave their heads, don't they? So if you're going bald, is it really a big deal? Somebody says transplant. Yeah, George Grove's got a hair transplant, right? Man's got a full head of hair again. Same like, what's his name? Wayne Rooney. Didn't he get a hair transplant as well? King Khan says, let's be honest, with black people, it's seen as more normal looking. Yeah, maybe it's a bit more common in the black community. I'd accept that. Hyro Protagonist says, head shape matters, don't want to be looking like Megamind. Okay. Fair comment. Somebody sending shots at G-Man. Okay. Shay says, Miller pulled out, confirmed. I hope that's trolling and it's not confirmed. Shout out to Peter. Muro's man says, I'm bald myself, but I have to say, you probably should get jacked to pull it off best. That's an interesting comment, actually. Because if you're skinny, then yeah, maybe a bald head looks a little different. Whereas if you're jacked, big muscular guy, it looks better. Might be a fair comment. Okay, other people are saying it is confirmed Miller is pulled out. That's disappointing. I was looking forward to Fabio Wardley versus Jarrell Miller. That is a big disappointment. Somebody says the Mitchell brothers. Let me look it up real quick. Yep, unfortunately, it is being reported by various news outlets So we've got the Sun here saying Fabio Wardley versus Jarrell Miller off just weeks before the fight as American pulls out. Oh man, I can't read the rest of it because let's try the Irish Sun. Nope. They want you to pay. What's the reason he's given for pulling out? Or what is the reason that's circulating on social media as far as why he's pulled out? Does anyone know? Shout out to Brad for the super chat. He says, do you think the winner of the WBC Grand Prix will have a better current CV than Atolma and or Torres? I guess you mean Atalma. I-T... How's it spelled now? I-T-A-U-M-A. Atalma or Torres at the end of the tournament. Probably not. I don't think the standard in the WBC Grand Prix from what I've seen is that high. So Italma beat Dempsey McKean. That's his best win so far. And Torres beat Guido Vianello, who's a decent level fighter. I want to say Guido Vianello is probably better than Dempsey McKean. So I would say Torres has beaten a better opponent than Italma has so far. But of course, the Vianello fight went the distance. Whereas Italma dusted off Dempsey McKean in the first round. And that's the guy that went the distance with Hrgovic McKean. So I'd say probably not, but I haven't seen all the fighters in the WBC Grand Prix, to be fair. I've just been paging in and out, watching little bits and pieces here and there. But shout out to Brad for the super chat. Austin Spears says, is Frank Sanchez fighting Hrgovic? Well, the fight has been ordered, yeah. The fight's been ordered as an eliminator for the IBF. King Khan says, I remember Atama was claiming he's 6'6", and now it's 6'2". I never heard him claim he was 6'6". BoxRec had him listed, I think, at 6'5" at one point. But then they've changed it. I think he's now listed at 6'2". But I don't ever remember Atama himself saying he was 6'6". Maybe you can direct me towards a video where he did. But nobody here, from what I can see, seems to know of the reason for Miller pulling out. People are speculating about PEDs, and that's fair speculation, given the guy's history. But I'd like to hear the reason for it. Again, people are assuming PEDs, but do we really know? Again, the guy is... I'm very, very cautious. Whenever people start getting into psychology, particularly psychopathy, they want to start accusing every single person of being a psychopath. You know, they're far too reckless with that term. But I wouldn't at all be surprised if Jarrell Miller, if he were to be assessed, you know, by a trained psychologist, I wouldn't at all be surprised if he is a psychopath. I'm not accusing him of being one, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. He's certainly brazen enough, and he exhibits a lot of the traits. Fujitsu says Fury just won in attention as Usyk fight has been announced. I suspect you're right. I suspect you're right. Shout out to Jake. He says, Hatman, for the first time, I haven't been able to stand that fat compulsive liar Fury, but you've made me dislike him even more with your detailed, analyzed content on him. Shout out to Jake. Yeah, Fury is something else. King says, a psychopath is usually more calm and calculated, right? Or am I missing something? No, psychopaths come in all shapes and sizes in terms of personality type. Again, the core of what a psychopath is somebody without empathy. Somebody that has absolutely no ability to empathize with other people, and they have no conscience. So, yeah, the notion that every psychopath is like cold and calculated and, never going to be loud or trash talk or never going to be rough and aggressive, that's just simply not true. There are plenty of psychopaths who are absolutely loud, aggressive, etc., etc. As I say, what makes them all psychopaths is the complete lack of empathy, lack of a conscience, etc. But some of them loud, some of them quiet, some of them, I mean, you can have a psychopath who's like a nerd, who's highly educated, wears glasses. A lot of the serial killers were like that. A lot of serial killers with glasses, nerdy, unassuming, and they're psychopaths. But then you'll also get a street thug who's like a laughing, swaggering man about town, and he's also a psychopath. So there's not like one exact same personality type that they have. What connects them, as I keep saying, is they have no empathy, no remorse, etc. King says, but can they differ from right and wrong? Psychopaths understand the notion of right and wrong, yeah. So they can differ. They understand what society deems right and wrong, yes. But they don't care. You know what I mean? They don't care about whether society thinks that certain types of behavior is wrong. Psychopaths see conscience as a ball and chain. So normal people, like myself, I'm assuming like most of you, have got a conscience. And our conscience limits our behavior. We can't do certain things because we'd feel bad about it. Psychopaths laugh at that. They think that that is a weakness. They think that makes you soft. Do you know what I mean? And they're going to they'll try to use your conscience to manipulate you. Gaslight you and stuff like that. Anthony YouTube says, Billy Joe Saunders versus Napa. Who have you all got? In fact, I was watching an interview with Dominic Kingle, on Boxing King Media's channel. And sometimes Dominic Kingle is difficult to watch. But in this particular interview, he was talking about the weight making process. And he went into great depth about what Eubank Jr. would have gone through as far as making weight and also the rehydration, because obviously Dominic Ingle trained Kell Brook when he was IBF welterweight champion. So he knows all about taking fighters through that process and how difficult it is. And it's a fascinating listen. If you haven't watched that interview, I highly recommend you go to Boxing King Media's channel and watch his latest interview with Dominic Ingle, where he goes through how meticulous the process is and all the physiological changes and what have you that take place when a fighter is cutting weight like that, how brutal it is, the process of rehydration and how slow the process of rehydration is, with electrolytes and so on and so forth. Definitely recommend that. But anyway, he also spoke about Billy Joe Saunders. He doesn't know who Napa is. He's never even seen Napa. But he instantly said he'd take Billy Joe in any kind of fight against the 6'5", manager or whatever. I don't know. I've never seen Napa fight. I couldn't tell you. He's a very big man, obviously. Used to be a grime rapper. Never seen him fight. Don't know what he can do. Matt says, I used to work with a psychopath. He had one of the most crazy risk tolerances I've ever seen. Yeah. That's one of the things that you find with most psychopaths is their risk tolerance is much higher than most people. And that's one of the things that allows many of them to become successful in whatever endeavor they're attempting. They could be attempting to win over a woman or a man. They could be attempting to endear themselves to somebody. They could be attempting to go for a particular job. They could be attempting to work their way up through a criminal organization. They could be attempting to do whatever. And as the saying goes, he who dares wins. Psychopaths are more willing to dare to do things. The normal people got a high risk tolerance. But it can also be a double-edged sword with psychopaths because they often don't know when to stop. They'll push it and push it and push it and push it and push it, and they'll think that they're invincible. And that's when things will backfire on them. You know, it becomes like a pathological thing where they're always looking for risks to take. And eventually, yeah, a good example of it would be Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy escaped from custody twice. And rather than, back in those days, you could move to another state and basically disappear because there was very little communication between law enforcement, between different states. And, there were no internet, no smartphones, etc., etc. You could move to another state and literally disappear. You commit a red rum. Yeah, you could end someone's life in one state, go live in a different state. Nobody would ever catch you in a lot of instances. He managed to escape police custody twice, and yet he continued committing his crimes. Do you know what I mean? Because he felt like luck would always be on his side, that he'd always be able to find his way out of these situations because he was a risk taker, had a very high risk tolerance. And like when they finally got him in Florida and they put him on trial, he fired his legal team and represented himself. You'll often see psychopaths do that, like the really extreme ones, firing their legal team and representing themselves. He had such hubris and audacity. He thought he could talk his way out of any situation. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even in the last few days of Ted Bundy's life, before he went to the electric chair, he was still trying to talk his way out of it and gaslight the public and take no blame, of course, right? Robert Wilson says, Napa is baby ting gone wrong. Okay. Napa never really had that type of energy when he was a grime rapper. From what I saw anyway, Napa always came across as kind of a cool guy. He never came across like one of these bully boy types. I never knew him personally, but again, just from watching videos of him clashing and stuff like that back in the days in grime, he never really came across with the bully boy vibes. Has he changed now? I don't know. But he always came across as kind of a cool guy. Snooker Fan TV says, who's got a better resume, Fury or Parker? I'm edging Parker. So Fury's beaten Wilder 3 times in Vladimir. Beat Dylan White. Parker's beaten Wilder, Bacoli, Zhang. I'm going to say Fury. Yeah, Fury's got a better resume for me. Robert Wilson says he isn't your everyday manager the way he speaks. Well, he doesn't even have the name of an everyday manager, does he? He's still using his rapper name, Napa. Not sure if that was his road name or whatever, but yeah, as a rapper, he used to go by the name Napa. All right, we got 250 concurrent viewers. If we can get the likes up, people, please. We've only got 47 likes. We need to get it up to 125. You can all stick a like on this stream. It'd be very much appreciated. It really helps with the visibility of these videos. Only takes a second of your time. Thank you in advance. Much appreciated. You can all just stick a like on this stream. Robert Wilson says they get upset. Why did Usyk want to fight someone over having an opinion? I don't think he wanted to fight someone over having an opinion. If you see the full video, Usyk is sitting down with his team, and George Fox comes over, introduces himself, and then starts saying that Usyk basically faked the low blow and that, you know, it was a legitimate punch, basically insinuating that Usyk's lying. So George Fox came over and started being antagonistic. It's not like, you know, it's not like, basically Usyk and his team were minding their own business. And Team Dubois came over and started running their mouth, is what it was. If you see the full video, because there are longer versions of it. And so Usyk gets drawn into this debate with George Fox, who comes over and starts running his mouth. Right? He gets drawn into the debate. And then he says, okay. And George Fox, at one point, threatens to knock a member of Team Usyk's head off. He says, I'll take your head off your shoulders, and all this type of stuff. And the guy was just being facetious. You know, the guy from Usyk's team was like demonstrating where low blows are and says, what if I hit you there and then hit you there? How would you react? Right? Because George Fox was trying to grill Usyk, and he was being condescending towards Usyk, is what George Fox was doing. And so a member of Team Usyk got involved and said, what if I did? How would you think you would react? And George Fox was like, yeah, I'll take your head clean off your shirt. He started doing the bad man stuff. So he was taking the energy there long before Usyk said, okay, let's do a 4-on-4. If you watch the full video, he took the energy there way, way, way before. And it's clearly mind games by Daniel Dubois and his team. They've got a strategy where they think they're going to get under Usyk's skin with all this low blow stuff. It's clearly mind games. And, you know, somebody there said that Usyk was joking 4-on-4. Maybe he was joking. Maybe. But who knows? I'm pretty sure Usyk is a rough guy. And I'm pretty sure that the people around him are rough. The country that he's from is not Disneyland. Even before the current situation there, it was a rough place. Very rough. Okay, rough, much rougher than the UK. I hope everybody's aware of this. I don't like mentioning the name because for the sake of the algorithm and whatnot, but the country that Usyk's from is a rough place. All right? Them men are not growing up there in the, 1990s living a wonderful life, most of them. They're growing up living a hard life, and there's insane levels of corruption, gangs, militant organizations, organized crime, you know what I mean? Poverty. Man's coming from a rough country. A Triple R, yeah, he says it there. Usyk did an interview before the first Fury fight where he said he was fighting football hooligans growing up in the Eastern Bloc. I'm sure he can fight on the street. I'm sure too. I don't know where George Fox thinks Usyk comes from, but it's nowhere sweet, I can assure you. Same Same with the people he rolls with. They don't come from anywhere sweet. Now that would be a move. Shout out to Aryed for that comment. That would be the ultimate move right there. Usyk should get Sokolovsky in his team. Yo, that would be a move right there. For those who don't know, Kamil Sokolovsky, who's a well-known Polish heavyweight journeyman, is the one that gave George Fox his professional loss. He's only had 5 pro fights. 4 wins, 1 defeat. That 1 defeat was to Kamil Sokolovsky. I think that was actually his last fight. Shout out to G-Man in the chat. S.A says, watch the movie Rhino. It's about gangsters in Ukraine. Very good movie. Lincoln says Sokolovsky on the cobbles. G-Man says Don Charles came across as a complete fool today. Well, the same as every other day then. I've never seen Don Charles not come across as a fool. You know? That guy is just insufferable, man. Unbelievable, that guy. Aryed says even Dubois looked embarrassed by Charles. So I'm going to read you something about Don Charles here. All right? Let me read you something. This was an interview that Don Charles did way back in the days, ahead of the David Haye, Derek Chisora fight. All right? This was an interview that he did with Boxing Scene. And so they ask him, you were born in Nigeria. What are your memories of early life over there? He said, during the 60s, until I was 6, things were good. Dad was a bank manager, and I came from a middle-class family. I was privately educated, and the standard was high. If you failed a year, you had to repeat, and no one wanted that. When I later came to the UK, my standards in English and maths allowed me to excel compared to the British kids. We were Biafran, and in 1967, a terrible civil war broke out, which my people lost and several family members were unalived. So later memories are not so good. Dad had a good position and was posted to the UK. I followed on. When I was 14, I was the oldest of 5, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. You landed in London's East End. How did you find growing up there in the mid-70s? Wow, I cherished every moment. Of course, there was some racism back then, but Britain allowed me to try my hand at so many things. And my message to all black people then and today is that there are so many opportunities in Britain if you're prepared to work hard. Dad was very strict and his message was, but anyway, I'll skip over all this stuff. This is the more interesting stuff here, right? What are your memories of your own amateur career? He says, at the age of 25, I moved from Ladbroke Grove to Dulwich, South London, and enrolled at the Brixton ABC in Herne Hill, where I was coached by a fantastic trainer called Floyd Alexander. Guys like Danny Williams, Spencer Fearon, and Marcus McRae, were there at the time. I did a lot of sparring with Danny, but as I was 10 years older, I took it easy with him. I also sparred future WBO heavyweight king Henry Akinwande. I boxed under the name of Charlie Eni, and that is spelled E-N-I. And you can look up Don Charles's amateur record on BoxRec, right? I boxed under the name Charlie Eni. Eni is my mother's maiden name. So somebody was wondering why Don Charles's son, George Fox, is not, doesn't share the same name as his surname as his dad. Well, Don Charles himself doesn't or didn't use the surname as his dad for his boxing career. He used his mother's surname, which is Eni, E-N-I. So he said, Eni is my mother's maiden name. Don is simply a nickname. And that's another thing. If you go onto Company's House, look up Don Charles on Company's House, you'll see what his actual name is. It's not Don. Anyway, it says, I used to run security in the clubs and my team called me the Don. It just stuck. Boxing as a super heavyweight, I had 13 bouts and won 10. I was good, but after getting stopped by Harry Sr. in the 1989 Southeast London ABA divs, I slumped into a deep depression and never boxed again. Yeah, he was knocked out by Harry Sr. in the first round in the ABAs. Okay, I'm not talking about the first round of the competition. I'm talking about the first round of the fight. He was knocked out by Harry Sr. in the first round of the fight. He said, I'd previously beaten Harry on a dinner show, but in between, I'd had to bury my father and I'd had my house repossessed. I shouldn't have fought as I hadn't trained, but knew I was more skilled than Harry and thought I was Superman. For 6 months, I had head pains and panic attacks. I was convinced I had a tumor in my head, but a friend arranged for me to see a neurologist on Harley Street. Once he advised me to come off antidepressants, I was right as rain. After the depression, I toyed with going pro. I moved from South London to a flat in Finchley and began training at the Cronk St Pancras gym in North London just to stay fit. Yeah, he goes on anyway. He says, well, they ask him, tell us a bit about your life away from boxing. Though I've had a few long-term relationships, I've never married. I do, however, have a 20-year-old son, George. He's a super heavyweight who's having his first bout in a couple of months. He's an exceptional talent, very athletic. Look out for him. I now live in Finchley, where prior to opening the gym, I used to own a florist's, the Flower Lounge. It was successful, but real hard graft, so I sold it. How did you become involved in coaching? He says, at his peak, my security firm ran about 10 contracts, and I insisted on training my 150 doormen in boxing so they could handle themselves. I hired a martial arts gym in Temple Fortune for a couple of hours, 3 days a week. And if they didn't train and spar, they basically didn't work. Lots were far bigger than me, but I really enjoyed it. I had rock solid pads and a big body bag and basically refined the methods Floyd Alexander had used at the Brixton Club. Many of my techniques are from his template. Anyway, he goes on to talk more about his backstory and then his time with Derek Chisora, etc., etc., etc. Then going into the David Haye fight where he's talking about David Haye. For those of you who don't know, David Haye broke his jaw in that altercation. Don Charles had to have his jaw wired. And he lost something like 40 pounds in a month. He had his jaw wired and he lost like 40 pounds in a month. Obviously he was like, consuming his meals through a straw. And so he's still salty about David Haye even now. What is it, like 13 years since David Haye broke his jaw? He's still salty now. Yeah, Don Charles is an overly emotional character to the point where he just acts silly. He's like, what's the word what's the word I'm looking for? He's like neurotic. Yeah, Don Charles is neurotic because he blows things out of proportion to a ridiculous extent. You know? Just blows things way out of proportion in his head. So he gets knocked out by Harry Sr. in the ABAs. And that plunges him into a deep depression where he's taking antidepressants and all this type of stuff. Why would it do that? Loads of fighters get knocked out in the amateurs, get beaten in amateur fights. It doesn't plunge them into a spiraling depression where, then again, there were other things going on in his life as far as he, said. Maybe that could contribute, but it's just an insight into the type of character he is. Everything is like this dramatic, this dramatic issue, which is far bigger than it actually is. This is why, after the AJ Dubois fight, Don Charles started attacking Gareth A. Davis. Look, I criticized Gareth A. Davis aplenty, but that particular situation, I could not put Gareth A. Davis at fault at all. Like the vast majority of people, he picked Anthony Joshua to win the fight. Somehow Don Charles said that Gareth A. Davis had a vendetta against him, not against Dubois. No, a vendetta against Don Charles. Man thinks the world revolves around him. You didn't see Dubois acting all funky with Gareth A. Davis. But Don Charles thought that the industry had a vendetta against him because people were picking against Dubois. Man, the man's just, neurotic. Shout out to EJ Boxing Live. I'm going in on your guy, Don Charles, bro. Shout out to EJ. Robert Wilson says he snitched on Hay. Did he? You mean over the broken jaw? All I know is that he wanted to fight David Hay over that broken jaw. He wanted to fight him. He was like, sending for him in phone calls and stuff like that, saying, I want to fight David Hay, I want to fight David Hay. I'm not sure what made him think that would be a good idea, since David Hay dusted off Don Charles and Derek Chisora single-handed. So if he can do that to the pair of them, single-handed, why would Don Charles have a chance in a one-on-one with David Hay? Like, come on. G-Man says Tony Yoka is trained by Don Charles. Yeah, I've heard that. EJ says Don wants to talk to you after you call him the baddest trainer in the UK. I remember when you messaged me, EJ, back in the days on Facebook. And you said Don Charles. I made a video where I said something about Don Charles. I think it was in regards to when he was training. What was that guy who he was training? The super middleweight, light heavyweight. I forget his name. He was a British fighter, but with like an Italian ancestry. So he had an Italian surname. What's his name? He's a cool guy. What's the guy with the Italian surname that Don Charles used to train? Frank Buglioni. Thank you. Yes, yeah, Frank Buglioni. Frank Buglioni. He's a cool guy, Buglioni. And I made certain comments about Don Charles's motives for training Frank Buglioni. And and EJ messaged me and said, Don Charles wants to chat to you. And I checked my requests because, there's friend requests and message requests. And I saw there was loads of requests from Don Charles. Yeah, Don Charles was vexed. Oh, that guy's got problems. I swear. That guy's got problems. I'm telling you. Yeah, Don Charles try to slide in the DMs. So he's always been like that. Do you know what I mean? He's always been an emotional guy. Dear, oh dear. BG says Don's probably still vexed with you. I imagine he is. Man, don't forget stuff like that. I imagine he is. Robert Wilson says Bullioni beat Hosea Burton. Who else did Bullioni beat? Did he beat Spider Richards? Am I misremembering, or did Bullioni beat Spider Richards? G-Man says, yeah, he beat Richards. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. That might have been Bullioni's best win in retrospect, innit? Beating Spider Richards. G-Man says Richards took it on 1 week's notice. Oh, okay. Didn't realize that. But still, one of the better wins for Frank Bullioni. Hey, shout out to Frank Bullioni, by the way. He's a cool guy, Frank. He's a cool guy. Ayed says him and Ted Cheeseman just disappeared. Well, Ted Cheeseman. I'm not sure how many of you guys saw the pictures, but a couple years back, Ted Cheeseman got stabbed up really bad. Really bad. I don't know how true any of this stuff is. I'm not even sure if I should repeat it. But when he got stabbed up and there were pictures of his wounds, when they were fresh, so there was still blood all over his body and whatever. When the pictures were released, there was a claim made as to why that was done to him. All right, I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know whether it's true. But there was a claim made about something that he had done and that he received that stabbing in retaliation. So I can't go into what the claim was because, again, I don't know whether it's true. But look it up online. You might find details about it. But yeah, that's the last I heard of Ted Cheeseman. And the last I saw of him was, man got poked full of holes like Swiss cheese. Shout out to James Madden. Linkage says, was it? No, it weren't that. It weren't that. But I guess you could say, I won't even go any further. I don't want to catch a lawsuit or something, but no, it wasn't that. It wasn't. Not with kids. It was nothing with kids. No, it was nothing like that. But it was something, you know, bad. Somebody says some fruity business. Nah, no fruity business. Cheese versus Egg. Yeah, that's when Egerton did fight Cheeseman, didn't he? Didn't Egerton win? Egg versus Cheese. Ayed says, love boxing rabbit holes. Oh, Egerton actually lost that one. Okay. Egerton lost that one on Fight Camp. Shout out to G-Man. Like, not being funny or anything, right? But I shouldn't even say this. But the way that Ted Cheeseman looks, it's like I almost don't want to be too hard on him. You know, like that. I'm not saying he can do no wrong. I'm not saying that whatever he's done or is alleged to have done isn't bad, but Ted Cheeseman looks like some kind of entity from Star Trek, right? If you look like that, bro, you're going to be mad at the world. And the world's going to have no sympathy for you. Just being real. The world is going to have no sympathy for you, and you're going to be upset at the world, bro, if you look like that. Like if I was friends with a guy who looked like that, I'd be like the best friend. Do you know what I mean? I'd help him out so much and have so much empathy for him. Like, real talk, I'm not even being facetious. Because most of his life must have been pain. Do you know what I mean? Most of his life must have been pain. So I want to help him out. G-Man says Cheeseman was peak Hearn because he did nothing. And I remember Charlos, who were champs at the time, mentioned him. Yeah, Hearn's peak was something to behold. He was able to bring out Dave Allen and have him as a bill topper, selling tickets. EJ says, nice guy, Ted. Afro Jam says another guy who disappeared was Sam Bowen. Bowen was pretty good. Had a close loss to Kakachi. Who was the other guy from up north? I think it was from Preston. Was it Fitzgerald? Yeah, he went way off the deep end, didn't he? I think Fitzgerald was on Skag and he was homeless. And then didn't he get arrested for a madness? Yeah, Scott Fitzgerald. Didn't he get arrested for some heinous crime not too long ago? Because Fitzgerald is the one that... Was he the one that gave Cheeseman his first loss? I forget who Fitzgerald beat now. Because he seemed to be doing well. And then all of a sudden he just went off the rails. He's on Skag. He's living under bridges like some kind of troll. Oh, he beat Fowler. Okay. Robert Wilson says he beat Fowler. Ed says he got caught with ounces of K. Okay, never knew that. Matt says, I remember Fitzgerald had that brief comeback when he was clearly medicated. G-Man says, Fitzgerald beat Fowler first, then Ted. Oh, beat Fowler first, then Ted was doing so well. Okay, yeah, so he beat them both. Ayad says Fitzgerald and Ammo Williams have a similar vibe. Yeah, Ammo Williams is clearly disturbed, isn't he? He's like mentally and emotionally disturbed. You know, with a guy like Ammo Williams, you wonder if something happened in his childhood. That's the kind of vibe I get, like he's traumatized or something, you know? Ammo Williams has got the traumatized vibe about him. BG says Ammo went crazy on her. And yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I think you're trolling. You must be trolling. You must be trolling. The logic is so primitive that you're coming with that you must be trolling. Because that is literally not what I'm saying. Exactly. Vincent described it. The point is that the mainstream tends to pick the easy answer, the ready-made, off-the-shelf consensus answer. Yet on this occasion, the History Channel is openly admitting they do not know how, therefore giving credence to the absurdity of it all. Robert says, let's move on, please. Mark says, even ChatGPT doubts it's possible. Anyway, peeps, been talking for 3 hours straight now. Is it 3 hours? How long do we even talk about boxing for? 30 minutes? Yeah, gonna bring this one to a close. I'd like to shout out everyone who joined the conversation. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. Why do I feel like I'm talking like an aircraft pilot? I should save that for when I do the night flight. I feel like I'm talking in the tone and the cadence of a captain, you know, when you're flying British Airways or something. I'd like to thank you and wish you a safe onward journey to your final destination. Yeah, shout out to everyone for locking in. Special shout out to everyone who donated via Super Chat. Make sure you take care out there, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.